The war that erupted between the United States and Iran in early 2026 was not lost in the traditional sense of military collapse or territorial conquest, but rather in the far more devastating realm of strategic overreach and geopolitical miscalculation, a defeat born not from inferior firepower, but from the arrogant assumption that overwhelming force could reshape a nation of 85 million people who had spent 4 decades preparing precisely for this moment of confrontation. When President Donald Trump ordered Operation Epic Fury on February 28, 2026, combining American and Israeli assets to strike over 500 targets across Iran in a single day, including the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and the decapitation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leadership, the expectation was that shock and awe would trigger regime collapse within weeks. Instead, the strikes activated a deeply embedded asymmetric warfare architecture that Iran had meticulously constructed with Chinese anti-stealth radar systems, Russian missile technology, and an indigenous drone production capacity that turned out to be virtually inexhaustible. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of global oil trade flowed, sent energy markets into convulsions and triggered a worldwide economic crisis that made American allies in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar, privately desperate for an end to a conflict they had initially supported but rapidly recognized as existential threat to their own stability. As Iranian ballistic missiles and drones rained down on U.S. bases across the region, Israel, and allied Arab states, the Pentagon discovered that its trillion-dollar military machine was designed for dominance, not for the grinding attrition of a war, where every billion-dollar aircraft carrier group faced endless waves of cheap, replaceable drones and missiles fired from mobile launchers that vanished into desert mountains. The expansion of the conflict into Lebanon, where Hezbollah's entry killed over 2,000 people and created a secondary humanitarian catastrophe, and the kidnapping of American journalist Shelley Kittleson by Iranian-backed militias in Baghdad, demonstrated that America's regional proxy network was crumbling under pressure rather than holding the line. By late March, Trump's rhetoric shifted from promises of bringing Iran back to the Stone Ages to musings about taking the oil and threats that sounded increasingly like desperation, while behind closed doors Gulf monarchs made clear they wanted regime change or nothing, and regime change was not happening. The 2-week ceasefire accepted in April was not a pause for reorganization, but an admission that the military campaign had reached a dead end, that 500 targets destroyed had not broken Iranian will, that cyber blackouts and propaganda messages had not sparked the popular uprising the CIA had predicted, and that every additional week of war deepened the economic damage to the global economy and eroded American diplomatic credibility. The negotiations that followed in Islamabad, Geneva, and Oman were the highest-level talks between the adversaries since 1979, and they exposed the extent of American retreat from its original demands. Iran refused to dismantle its uranium enrichment program, the very core objective that had triggered the crisis, and the United States was forced to accept a framework where Iran merely agreed not to pursue nuclear weapons while maintaining the status quo of its existing capabilities. The 2026 Memorandum of Understanding, signed at the Palace of Versailles on June 17th, committed America to lifting all sanctions, releasing frozen Iranian assets, and developing a $300 billion reconstruction plan for a nation its bombs had shattered, in exchange for nothing more than a reopened Strait of Hormuz and a 60-day ceasefire that might or might not hold. In the final accounting, America had not been defeated on the battlefield. Its military remained unmatched, its homeland unviolated, its government intact, but had fallen into the same trap that had consumed it in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The illusion that superior technology and firepower could substitute for political understanding, that destroying infrastructure equaled breaking national will, and that a nation with thousands of years of history could be bent to American preferences by the application of force alone. The B-52 bombers flew home, the aircraft carriers steamed away, and the desert sands began reclaiming the abandoned bases. But the question lingered in the empty sky above the Persian Gulf. What, exactly, had been won for all that had been spent, and what had been lost that could never be recovered?